Hello, you're listening or watching 15 Minutes or Less with me, Mabs.
Paris 2.
Amy.
Amy.
And Sarah.
Hello, and welcome. So, I'm going to start the clock as soon as possible. I'm going to start it immediately.
Like now.
We get
Straight away.
Stop that, do it now. James.
Okay, it started because we're
5
on
minutes
to
or less.
the letter X. And the letter X is a challenging letter of the alphabet as it is. There aren't that many choices. This is a short on supply letter for things we can talk about, which is why we have got the very light-hearted topic today. Xenophobia.
Just seeing what else we could have had at the moment.
Well, one of the topics I put forward was the letter X, which no one wanted to go for. So there we go. So we're on to xenophobia. Anyone know what xenophobia means? Because I know a few of you didn't a few weeks ago.
Yes, I know what it is, but if you want to take it away, Mabs.
Take it away, because I have notes here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go right.
So for those of you that don't know what xenophobia
Educate
is,
us.
xenophobia is fear or hatred of something foreign or strange. That's quite simply what it is. And generally that ends up being people obviously from other countries or extraterrestrials maybe. I don't know, we hate them, don't we? We've talked about that before. It's a pretty heavy subject, not a particularly nice subject, to be honest. This could be the first episode where we don't make it to 15 minutes because I feel like I know we're not experts on things, but I'm looking around this table, a lot of blank faces.
I doubt it. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it a lot, but I think we would.
You think
we will.
Okay, well, very good. Well, I did a little bit of reading before we started this podcast because it is a tricky subject to get into. And I found a little part that said, if you look back into Western culture, xenophobia can be sourced as far back as the Roman and Greek empires. They basically thought they were far superior to everyone else. Therefore, they would enslave anyone else, believing basically that you were a barbarian if you weren't Roman or if you weren't Greek. You're a bloody savage. So I'm going to enslave you, starting with you, and then
She
you.
needs it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
Barbaric.
but I mean, it's that kind of sense of entitlement, and because they were afraid of the unknown, it was like, oh, we don't understand it, so we'll kill it or we'll enslave it. Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't seem to matter though. I mean, that's thousands of years ago in our history, yet it is still incredibly relevant today, which is quite sad, but very true. And I mean, like right now today, I mean, you've only got to look as far as when I actually Googled xenophobia, looking up the word in advance of this podcast, there's actually stuff going on right now in South Africa where there are the kinds of arguments and fights and riots going on, which I think we're all too familiar with, where residents of South Africa are having violent protests because there are immigrants coming from other African countries who are taking their jobs because they're undercutting them. Yeah, they're taking their jobs. That's the South Park reference in case none of you. But that is something that happens here, isn't it? That's something people get very upset about and angry about here. And I find that difficult to relate to sometimes because it hasn't happened to me maybe. And I don't judge people because of where they're from. But I mean, do you find that kind of point of view from people quite challenging? Have you ever sort of encountered someone that has very strong views about immigrants and losing their jobs and like, you know, they should all bloody go back where they came from, that sort of thing?
You hear it a lot, but
You do.
to be fair, they're not, because my views aren't that way. That's not the circles I hang around in. The people I hang around with tend to be similar to my thoughts and views. So
I mean, it's interesting because, like, obviously we've had the whole Brexit thing in this country, which has dragged on and on and on and on and on.
Everyone's favourite subject.
Everyone's favourite B word, Brexit. Yeah, we can keep the swearing, it's fine. But one of the things about that is this kind of I mean, it's a very, very complicated, multifaceted thing that people like to hugely oversimplify, which I'm going to now. One of the arguments about it was to do with immigration particularly from the EU. And I've known, even from when I used to grow up in Southampton, there would be local communities in Southampton that would be entirely Polish because we had a lot of Polish immigrants from the EU. I mean, that was never a problem for me, but I would very clearly hear people having a massive problem with it. Massive problem with it. And I just feel like, in London, we have such a diverse community, cultures, and it's just sort of, I don't know, you're more understanding of people, you're more tolerant of people because you're just around them and you realize people are just people at the end of the day. But yeah, I think that's more stuck when you go out of the city. And I think that's one of the disconnects with Brexit, isn't it? Is that, there are parts of the country where people have these very, very strong points of view. But actually, they don't even have that much of a immigration culture. Yeah, absolutely, Parasty. There's sort of like some of the most highly pro-Brexit areas don't have that many people that aren't of an original
like
UK
you said, that's the result of not knowing those people personally, because you always have the image of those people in your head based on what you see on news. But when you actually know someone, that would change the whole experience, because now that you humanizing that culture or that race.
Yeah,
It's quite true. I was watching, I don't know if anyone's seen it, like Benefits Britain and stuff like that, and they focus a lot on people obviously claiming on benefits. And one of the focuses was on, I can't remember, it was a Polish family or something, and it was this guy, his family still lived in Poland, but he came and worked over here, and any of the benefits, like the child benefits, he had sent back home to Poland to his wife and children, who claimed all the health benefits. I don't know, whatever it is, I don't really know them all, so I can't really say, but I think what they did was they focused on that so much. I think now people tend to think that's every Polish family that's over here. You see the man working and then shipping all our taxpayers' money back home. And obviously you're gonna get people claiming benefits in all crooked ways from all different races. It doesn't necessarily have to be down to one race.
No, you're absolutely right. And I just feel as though, doesn't that say a lot more about the faults with the system than with the people using it? If a system is in place and it's not right, it's not working,
allow that to happen rather than.
And I think in some ways it's somewhat just human nature, isn't it? Regardless of what it is, you could be playing a game. There's always one part of you at some stage, even if you're a child, you're like, how am I going to cheat this?
Of course, everyone's going to get the best out of a situation they can for their own survival.
Yeah.
And even generalizing, that's part of human nature as well. You want simple answer. You want to say, this race, they're all like this, because it's hard to think with nuance. It takes more work. So you're simplifying everything.
I mean, I'd be interested to ask you, Parastu, because obviously you've had a different experience growing up from all of us, and you've come to this country. So it's like, is there any observations that you've had in your time kind of growing up and moving around where you've kind of, maybe encountered this sort of attitude from people? Has that been something that's happened? Has it been quite challenging? Because I'm sitting in the privileged position of that kind of middle-class white English guy. Everything's fine.
I think you guys would find it interesting to know that. I think in Iran, people were more racist because Iran is not a multicultural country. So I grew up in a Persian neighborhood, go to Persian school. We didn't have any other races. So you grow up with what I'm trying to say is that racism is everywhere. It's not just white race that could be racist. And I didn't experience a lot of racism before I became Muslim. So I think because before that, it was hard for people to know what race I am exactly. They know I'm a foreigner based on the accent and my look, but they didn't know what I am. But after I start covering my hair, they knew that, oh, she's from Middle East. So that's when the experience changed for me. But I think being Muslim is very different than, I don't know, being a certain race, because that was a choice. When I chose that, I knew going into it that it's going to happen. So it didn't really affect me because I was mentally prepared for it.
Also, in Western culture, it's just something that people have almost been taught to be fearful of or taught to be wary of because of terrorism and things that have happened. And some people were somewhat dependent on where you get your news and your information from or who you spend your time with.
It's so sad though, isn't it? That that's the way that you have to think, that you have to be mentally prepared to get this kind of...
What I'm trying to say is that, like, it was a choice. But for a lot of people, the color of their skin is not a choice. Like, you cannot do anything about it. Even if you want to change it, you can't. But, like...
But even by making that choice, it shouldn't be something that's seen as a bad decision for you. It should be supported, and that's what I find wrong.
It's weird because I'm the only foreigner here, but like I'm trying to make the other side of conversation. I think I have a lot of sympathy for some of those people because I feel like they grow up with certain culture, let's say British culture, and they think that this is what I loved, this is what I grew up, and this is changing because
this is
all
under
of
attack,
people,
isn't it? Yeah.
And I feel sad for these people because it is something that I can relate to, even though I'm not British. I understand wanting to protect your culture, you want to protect your country, but it takes a lot of, education, and you have to be very emotionally intelligent to, be accepting of other people.
I mean, that's one of the big things, kind of going back to the dirty Brexit word, but that is one of the big things that was the push. It was this kind of like, when you talk about xenophobia, one of the definitions is it's just the fear of the unknown. And the thing is that, things have been more challenging for people for over a decade now in this country, although, we still have pretty good lives. But, when we were only talking about wealth in the last episode, and since that financial crash in 2008, it has been more challenging for people. And I think because of that, and because of the kind of society we live in, if there's no money there, you want someone to blame. If your quality of life isn't good and you feel like your livelihood and your culture is under attack, you want someone to blame, and you're not going to look at yourself. It's too difficult to look at yourself. It's much easier to point at the big, scary, bad, unknown thing I don't understand. And
I'd be interested, James, to see the stats on the ages that voted Brexit out, because I think this is something I probably just like. I mean, I could be totally wrong because I don't have the stats, but I should imagine a lot of the older people that have been in England before there was a lot of diversity. Wanted to protect it because they're not working in jobs with people with different backgrounds. They're just seeing them change because they're already sort of like now into retirement, and so they're just seeing their country as, they don't understand it, they find it a bit scary, and it's, as you say, it comes from that fear of the unknown. They're just seeing their landscape change from what they knew it growing up, and that's like something big.
I don't disagree with you. That is certainly one perspective, but it's just so, to quote Shrek, right? Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. No, it's like, it is a very layered argument, because I think the other thing, because you talked about communities, Paris do, and one of the arguments is, because obviously there's this perception of like, my way of life's being changed, I want to do something about it. But there's actually this kind of argument referred to as the left behind in this country. But the left behind doesn't mean like their world is changing around them. They're actually afraid of it changing. It's not really changing yet, but they might live. It might be a sort of slightly older, white, middle class English village or town, but they're worried about it changing, and they don't want it to change. So we're gonna do something about it. So there you go. Just gonna go blame people we don't know.
But that's like a very deep rooted fear. I think everyone has it.
Yeah.
You don't want the things to change, or if you have some way of living that you used to, you want to keep it that way.
Change is scary.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, you know. It's but it's the only thing that is certain in this life, isn't it?
That's a deep part of this
Yeah.
podcast.
I just think if everyone was just a bit more accepting and just let people be, and everyone respected everyone, there'd be nothing to be afraid of, because we just all take care of our communities, we all take care of our...
It starts with education though, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you just need to be educated, not necessarily even in like everybody's ways of living or life. You don't need to learn those things to be an accepting, open person. You just have to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
I think media is also very important, because I was...
Oh, we did it. We did it. We did
Nice.
15 minutes on xenophobia.
It wasn't as deep as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a bit sad.
as scary.
I thought Amy was going to cry and Paris 2 was going to run away.
Wow. That was good. We lived it.
We did.
Anyone got anything they want to close on?
No, I'm gonna go and cry now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think everyone a little bit racist.
Yeah.
Let's end it on
That's the name of the song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Bye, neighbour.
From Avenue Q. Everyone's a little bit racist. This has been 15 minutes or less. Thank you very much for listening or watching, and we'll be back again next time. Goodbye.